Yes, folks, hello, welcome once again to MoDXtra Games and Collectibles. It's time for another action figure review here on the channel. And as you can see on the screen right now, today we're taking a closer look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Guy Gardner figure. So stick around, I'm going to give you all the ins and outs, ups and downs that you need to know about this figure. So if you're thinking about picking one up for yourself, you know whether it's worth your cash or not. I'm going to take a quick look at the packaging and then we'll get into the figure itself. We'll talk about the aesthetic and the visual experience, have a look at the articulation and the poseability, and then a bit of a walk through all the accessories and added value. And with all that said and done, you should have plenty of thorough information to make your mind up about Guy Gardner. So let's get into it and let's jump back to past Chris, who's going to take a look at the box on the day it arrived on his doorstep. There we go then, folks. Then here is the collector's edition Guy Gardner. You can see that I've got the classic Green Lantern uniform, but there is a Platinum Chase edition, or whatever they call it, in the blue yellow ring version, but I'm very pleased to have got the classic Green Lantern version. Very pleased when I opened up the box a little earlier on today, and you can see that it's the standard McFarlane DC Multiverse kind of packaging stuff for the collector's edition figures. Got the shiny silver collector's edition bit down the side, the logo, the name of the character, the big window showing off the character and some of the goodies. Then on the back, a big chunky piece of comic book artwork, which I think is this from the Jeff Johns Rebirth book, off the top of my head, maybe, can't remember, but a decent shot of Guy Gardner nonetheless. And in a rare instance of synergy between the artwork and the figure, we've actually got this little hairstyle included. I can't tell you how many times I've had a DC Multiverse and the artwork doesn't match up with the figure you get in the box. Name, figure number, logo, all the usual McGubbins on the side, legal bollocks and malarkey on the bottom. And that's it, you know, classic windowed box, just letting the figure speak for themselves. So I'm going to go away and crack Guy Gardner open, get some good hands-on man-child playtime in with the figure, and I'll be back in a couple of days to share some review thoughts. So stick around. Future Chris will be back with you in just a second. Okay then, folks, well, here's Guy Gardner as he came out the packaging. We'll take a closer look a little later on at the accessories that sort of change up the aesthetic qualities, but we're going to talk about the visual experience now. And as you can see, sort of taking a nice look head to toe on the figure. This is a good, classic look Guy Gardner, you know, Green Lantern uniform, as we know and love him from his kind of core period in the 80s into the 90s and his return in the noughties. There is a platinum edition of this figure in the yellow lantern ring, you know, the Guy Gardner warrior type stuff, before he went all weird with the tattoos. But this is nice classic look. And as he comes out the packet, he's got this kind of later era hairstyle and the more kind of serious looking face, kind of post Jeff Johns Rebirth kind of stuff there, which is nice to see. And as you can see, you know, the core visual identifying features of that classic look uniform are there. Got his big collared coat thing with no sleeves. The black, white and green colour scheme is in place. The classic kind of 80s look, skin-tight spandex legs and arms, the big white gloves, all that stuff's in place there. And, you know, your overall kind of shelf presence visual experience is pretty good. However, upon closer inspection, there's a few things that stand out. So bringing him a bit nearer to the camera then, let's start up top here. You can see we've got the head sculpt there. I'll talk about it now, although I'll revisit it with the accessories later on. But the face is a face plate there that you can remove, and the hairpiece can come off as well. There's a different hairstyle for the character too. And I'll talk about the alternative faceplates and the other hairpiece a little later on. But this design choice has an impact on the visual experience with the figure. Because while the face sculpt is pretty good, this faceplate, you know, it's nice facial features, good paint applications on the lips, the eyes, the eyebrows, and so on and so forth, which is nice. The hairpiece is well sculpted with a nice wash in it there, with that classic kind of Guy Gardner gingery thing going on. The colour of the ears and the neck is different to the skin tone colour of the faceplate on the front. The way the faceplate fits in, you've got this kind of ugly join line coming down the front here. And then the same thing's happening with the hair. You've got this lovely sculpted hair with a great wash over it that looks really wonderful. And then his kind of short back and sides buzz cut is just a plain, you know, orange stripe at the back there, which incidentally is badly painted too. I've got like skin bits under here. I don't know if you can see, and behind the ears isn't painted very well. So it's it's like for everything that Toddy gives you with the figure, he takes away, which is an absolute shame. That at minimum, the color tones should match there. I don't know if I'm. Let me turn the lighting up a bit. I just turn the lighting up a little bit in the hope that maybe you can see what I'm talking about there. And once you see it, you can't stop seeing it, which is an absolute shame because the profile, the straight-on profile, looks pretty damn good, if you ask me. Moving further down the figure, though, we can see Todd playing to his strengths. The kind of fabric texture detail in the coat here with the little pulls and creases and bunching up pieces, which is always nice to see. Got the white trim around the edge of the jacket and obviously the Green Lantern symbol there in prime position on the front as it appears on the character. We've then got nice sculpted details in the belt. The white of the belt is reflecting my lamp quite a bit on the camera, but hopefully you can see as I turn it around there, some nice sculpted detail in there and comic book accurate. We had that big chunky all white belt across the centre there. Same again with the gloves. You can see, or hopefully you can see, despite the light reflecting off it, that there's some nice sculpted details in here as well. With some texture in there and some style and design, which is lovely. Sometimes with McFarlane figures, I've been critical of the hand size, that the hand looks a little bit disproportionate, but these seem to be all right. And then, of course, as you can see here on his right hand, he's got his Green Lantern ring in place there. The musculature is good. The black hides the pin joints a little bit better than it does on some other figures, so I find it less aesthetically egregious, although I don't know if you can see again, we've got a slightly different shade of black on the knee to the rest of the figure, and even though it's quite shiny, I don't mind that because that's sort of comic book accurate. And then just finally a note on the boots, they're well sculpted enough, that's all fine. I've got a very ugly joint here on the toe articulation on the left leg here. But one other thing is the green's different. The green on the boots doesn't match up with the green on the top half, which is a bit of a shame. He's very bulky across the middle here as well. He's a bit chunky. So if we like the way the camera's on him right now, he looks a bit barrel-chested, which is fine. But I remember him being a little. He was a bit of a chunkier lad, but I remember him being a bit more svelte than this, but it does give a strange kind of aesthetic quality sometimes with perspective, which is something to be mindful of as well. Now, overall, he's a decent looking figure. I'm always happiest with a DC Multiverse figure when it's a good classic look uniform, and here's one is. He's doing lots of great figures, as the death rattle on the line is rattling, he's doing lots of good figures, so overall it's a good figure and it's got good shelf presence, but it's just the implementation of this kind of faceplate headpiece idea at the top, sadly, while it adds value in terms of your accessory experience, which as I mentioned before, I'll return to in a bit, it has an impact on the aesthetic quality, and once you see it, or you're always trying to pose it to sort of disguise it a little bit, so I'm going to kind of give him a half thumbs up, because I actually have had some fun. I got him next to Hal Jordan, and with Batman I got my Booster Gold and my Blue Beetle out, because that's my Justice League, Guy Gardner with Batman and Blue Beetle and Fire and Ice and that crowd, and it does look good, but just a few little niggly points that have let the figure down slightly. So there you go, there's the visual experience. Let's now take a close look at the articulation. So it's pretty standard DC Multiverse articulation, folks. So if you're already familiar with the DC Multiverse articulation scheme, then I've put chapters in. You can jump ahead to take a look at the accessory selection. But if this is your first ever DC Multiverse review, or you're just interested to see if there's any quirks, then stick around and I'll walk you through it. And I'm going to start with the head here. It's the standard ball in the base of the head there, which gives you decent up, decent down, swivel all the way around, a bit of tilt and stuff. A little bit tight in the neck area, but it's there. But you can't, if you're doing flight poses, it's a little bit awkward. Then down into the shoulders, it's the standard peg and hinge in there, so you can swivel all the way around and get him out to a T-shape like that. It does have the usual McFarlane, like the little covers over the joint there, but obviously because of the way the jacket comes, you can barely see them under there, but they are there. Got the swivel there at the top of the bicep and tricep. You got the pinned elbows that'll get you up to there. And then it's the McFarlane style ball joint wrist there, so you can, you got your movement, and you can swivel the hand around on the peg and move it about. Into the main torso, you've just got the point of articulation here underneath the coat, so you can see you've got a bit of swivel, but barely any crunch at all. It's the DC Multiverse hinge in the groin there, so you've got good Russian ballet splits. There's a little bit of movement in and out on the ball there as well. No thigh cut. Pin double knee, that'll get you up to there. No boot cut. And then the ball ankle piece, like with the wrists. So you got your hinging and your rocking on there. Just as an aesthetic note, actually, I meant to mention it earlier. The blend of the boot into the foot there, where the ball joint is that newer version that looks a bit nicer and a bit cleaner, in my opinion. And then, of course, as with McFarlane, Guy Gardner can bend his toes, like with all the DC Multiverse. So the articulation is all right. I'll say the same I always say with McFarlane Toys, that in this day and age, I'm finding it limited, particularly when I compare it to some of the other kind of more superhero-y lines. You know, Marvel Legends, Jada Street Fighter is a great example. You know, the absence of thigh cuts, the absence of boot cuts. I find the wrist joints and the ankle joints more difficult to manipulate into a way that I want them. The torso's very limited in terms of movement, unless you knock him off, of course. They are just generally more statuesque figures with action figure articulation, you know, which I've mentioned before. And so I find them less fun to photograph and play around with. I just sort of find a pose I like, stick him in that pose, throw him on the shelf for a bit, and, you know, that's the end of that. And if you know that going in, then that's fine. You know, which I do. I still maintain, I've said it before, I find the pins on these really, really ugly, you know. They just let down the whole figure in terms of an aesthetic quality. So, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I've not been a fan of DC Multiverse, you know, McFarlane's articulation of them for a long time now, really. But I know that going in, you know, I know that. So I pose accordingly. All right, well, there is the articulation. Let's now take a look at the accessories and added value, shall we? And to get us started with the accessories, we've got the hairpiece, the separate hairpiece. So as you can see here, I mentioned before about the 80s / early 90s Guy Gardner that was my Guy Gardner. And here's the bowl cut, the classic look bowl cut. It's a nicely sculpted piece. It's got some kind of swooshy, dynamic, you know, flappy in the windy kind of feel about it, which is good to see. It's perhaps a little bit shorn, like a bit extreme bowly compared to the comic book look, but that's fine. That's all good. And this is a removable piece. You can pop it off. It's quite rubbery in nature. You can see you got the little kind of grooves in there to pop it on the peg with the matching groove at the back there. So that's fine and dandy. That's lovely. There you go. There's your classic look Guy Gardner hairdo. Then returning finally to the face plates, we've got two alternative faces for Guy Gardner. Here's the first one here, which is the kind of smirking, arrogant, knobhead Guy Gardner. Again, loving this. This is bringing me back to my love of like Keith Giffen era Justice League stuff, which is cool. This is probably my favourite of all of them. However, it's my favourite aesthetically. It's not my favourite in terms of implementation. So if I spin him round a bit there, you can see that gap is really big on this one. And with the other hair, I'm not sure whether it's quite the same with this hair, but it's a bit loose. Oh, we're not too bad there, but it sits a bit loose when you combine it with the other hair. Here we go. I've just popped it on to demonstrate. See? It's because you don't have the bowl over the front kind of holding it in place. But while it's off, you can see we've got a peg hole and some grooves there and a weird like arse-looking thing at the chin there that aligns with the matching stuff on the inside to peg it in. Well, like I say, this face with this hairdo, super loose. And then the other alternative face is this wonderful kind of screaming face here. Again, you know, as far as the sculpt goes, I mean, it's a bit goofy, but it's supposed to be a bit goofy, you know? Kind of just really in line with that sort of goofy look that he had back in the day. But the sculpt is really great. Look at the teeth and the tongue in there. Sorry, let me keep him in focus. Look at the teeth and the tongue in there and the furrowed brow and stuff. And this one doesn't suffer quite as much as the other faceplate with the gap at the back there where it joins in. However, obviously all three, as you've possibly noticed, have the colour scheme problem where the ears and the neck don't match with the face on the front there. Then we have 4 alternative hands, 2 for each left and right. You can see the right hands both still have the lantern ring on them, and we've got a kind of pointy finger here, a trigger hand for gripping stuff. We've got a closed fist, and then we've got another trigger grippy hand for the other side as well, which is fine. It's great. I love hand swaps. Open up your world of possibility with your posing and your stuff that you're trying to do. This is great. Next up, we've got the Green Lantern's Green Lantern for charging his ring here. We've seen this before, I think. Oh, well, maybe we've seen it before. I've just dug out my Hal Jordan one, and it's different, look. It's bigger and chunkier. So maybe we haven't seen that one before. I don't collect the line extensively enough to know, so if someone is aware of whether we've seen this one before, but it's fine. It's nice. It's in this kind of transparent green look there. We've got the glowing bits at either end, so he can get his ring charged up, and, black as day, bright as day, black as night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light. Then we have the foot stand. This comes as standard with all the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse one, because this is a collector's edition figure. We've got the slightly shinier silver DC on there rather than the one that's sort of in a more watermark style. It's fine. It's got a single peg on it. I think foot stands should come with every action figure. Although I do particularly appreciate these with DC Multiverse, because sometimes they're quite top heavy and it just helps with your posing if you're putting them on the shelf. They are fingerprint magnets though. And then you get the trading card, which again comes as standard with the McFarlane DC Multiverse figures and the page punchers and what have you. This is the same artwork on the back, which again I've not checked, but I'm pretty sure is from the DC, the Green Lantern Rebirth by Jeff Johns. Maybe not, I don't know, but it's got the shiny bit up the side because it's a collector's edition figure, and then some biographical information on the back. These are fine, whatever, it's I basically put them in a ring binder and look at them every now and again. And that's the extent of it, but they're okay. So it's a solid enough accessory selection. I like the face plates, even though I've got some concerns about the implementation of them. I'm always in for hand swaps. I like the hair pieces to allow you to sort of lean into your era of Guy Gardner that suits you. Foot stands are always good. Giving him a Green Lantern. Standard, that's all fine, and it certainly opens up your world of possibility with your posing and how you want to display him. And if you are taking photographs, you can do different stuff with the hands and the hair, and it's got good stuff going on. However, I call this segment of the video reviews accessories and added value, and I do question the value a little bit here. So this is a collector's edition figure. I paid £30 for this. £30, which when I compare it to, what was the last collector's edition figure I got? Wonder Woman, maybe. I'm thinking she had a shield and a sword and an axe and a lasso of truth, and it just seems a bit thinner on the ground, particularly when Todd's lagging a little bit behind in articulation. His joints are still pinned. He's not come with a wired cape or anything that we're now seeing with a couple of the figures that are coming out. So I do question whether the value is there, whether there shouldn't be something else a little bit more in addition. And my suggestion would have been a flight stand and an energy effect. Like my Hal Jordan's got a green energy effect thing that goes over his ring hand. So and the addition of a flight stand in particular, it's not like he doesn't do them. In fact, I've got one right here because I was using one of my older ones to display him on. I had him flying. So I'm giving it a tentative thumbs up, maybe leaning down a bit, with that small print, with that note about the question of value. Okay. Okay, so there we go. There's accessories and added value. Let's now take a look at Guy Gardner next to a couple of other DC Multiverse figures, shall we? Okay, folks, well, to get started then, here is Guy Gardner with Hal Jordan. This is the McFarlane Toys Digital, the DC Direct Digital version of the figure, which is obviously a much more classic look uniform, which is why I went for it. Good looking pair. If you're building a little collection of Green Lanterns, you've got a John Stewart and a Kyle Rayner and stuff in there, and, they've done a Killer Warg and things, haven't they? So, yeah, good looking pair together. I might get a John Stewart and then wrap it up there. To be fair, if it's ever in the sale, see if it goes cheap when Mattel take over. I mentioned before about my love of the Keith Giffen era of the Justice League America and Justice League International. Here he is with Booster Gold and Blue Beetle from that time. This is the double pack where they both came together. Here's Guy Gardner with Wonder Woman. I was about to say the collector's edition, but is it a platinum edition? I can't remember. I get lost in it all. It's too confusing, Todd. It's too confusing, Todd. And finally, here's Guy with Batman. And there we go then, folks. There's my review of Guy Gardner, the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Guy Gardner for you. Normally at this point I'd do a 360 view with the turntable, but I decided I wanted to pop him on the flight stand and show you kind of how I had him displayed on the shelf, and that makes it too big for me to zoom out and get all in on camera. But no, not a great deal else to say. I think you can get the gist from the review I've just given. It's all right. It's, standard McFarlane stuff. It's all right. Am I pleased to have a classic look Guy Gardner? Yes. Have I had fun with him? Yes. Are those usual McFarlane things that seem to oddly annoy me all the time, that you could argue I'm possibly more forgiving of with other figure lines, are they present? Yes. I just think, I don't know, I'm very curious and interested to see what happens with the Mattel takeover of the line. This is likely my last ever McFarlane DC Multiverse review on the channel. It's likely going to be my last ever McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse figure purchase, unless I do go for like a John Stewart, or I might try and grab that new Superman and get rid of my old ones. I don't know. But I'd be very surprised if there's someone who's subscribed to this channel and watching religiously waiting for my DC Multiverse reviews anyway. So it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, he's fine. He's just fine. He's just overpriced for what he is. And I was more forgiving of it with McFarlane when it was like $19.99, but this guy was $29.99. It was like a whole tenner more. I don't see where that extra value is. I just don't see it. The price has crept up, but the quality has remained the same. I'm not getting anything more for my money, and so. Yeah, let's see how it goes in Mattel, I suppose. So there we are. All right, folks, well, if you did find that useful, do all the usual YouTube-y stuff. Love to see you around here again for another video sometime soon. So if you're just generally an action figure fan, not just DC Multiverse fan, then swing back round for another video sometime soon. But in the meantime, all that remains for me to say is have a great day, have a great week, and I'll see you again next time. All right, ta-ta now.